So basically, I think that in modernity, we have to kind of just bite the bullet and accept that to believe in God, to say that you believe in God, is just almost by definition stupid. Like it's wrong by definition within our culture, the way that those words have come to have certain meanings. And I think if you are religious, for instance, I consider myself religious. I believe that I do believe in God in some sense of those terms. I think we need to be mercilessly honest, brutally honest with ourselves about the fact that to say I believe in God today it's almost just like a factually impossible, logically impossible statement. It's been rendered essentially false because of what those terms have come to mean. And yet, if you believe that you believe in God in some sense, how is that possible? How can you make sense of that? Even though I'm a rationalist and I'm a modernist in some sense, like I don't allow anything into my beliefs which I cannot justify rationally. Nonetheless, even still, I do think that there is a deep truth to God that I do believe. And yet, there's this problem that almost by definition, it's like the essence of stupidity to believe in this kind of entity, right? So why is this? How is this? I want to make this video kind of explaining that because I've been thinking a lot about that. And I think the solution to this is to understand that the actual content of the word God is extremely ambiguous, and it always has been, and it should be. So we as moderns have come to have a very kind of precise sense of what language should be and how it should be used. Every word has to have a kind of very specific positive content for it to be a legitimate use of language. But in fact, through the ages, it's been a widespread practice and a legitimate practice to use words much more creatively than that. I think the word God, for instance, is more like a creative placeholder for things that we don't fully understand. And this is exactly encoded in a lot of the great religions. In Christianity, for instance, mysteries are an essential part of the belief. Like you don't actually believe necessarily in some specific positive entity as we today think about it, but actually you believe what does it mean to believe in a mystery, for instance? Well, that's not so obvious. And so I think God is an example of that. So if I said that I believe in God, I'm not saying that I think there's some guy in the sky, right? You can't think about it that way. Obviously, if you think about it that way, it's dumb and superstitious. But if you think that God is really just a placeholder for the essential creative force that somehow produced all of this universe in which we find ourselves, if you think there is something essential to the order of life and to the order of creation, and that you do affirm that, essentially, then you can say that you believe in God. And I don't think, by the way, that this is heretical to Christianity, as I think a lot of people would say to me that it is, that they would accuse me of a kind of vague pantheism that's basically antithetical to the essential Christian message. But I wouldn't buy that. Like, I think you can believe in the God of the Bible. You can believe in a kind of creator force or essential creative force without necessarily seeing it as some specific entity that has some kind of positive empirical existence. And I think the reason that's fair to say is because the very idea of a kind of positive empirical existence separated out from some kind of superstitious, spiritual existence, that's only invented really after Christ anyway. So almost by definition, if the Bible says, he created the world in 7 days or whatever, the he is just a shorthand, it's just that's a heuristic. It's not saying necessarily that to believe in God, you have to believe in this person somewhere who created the universe, like I would create, a piece of music or something like that. So that's essentially what I think is going on here. And by the way, I think there's also other kind of scriptural, if you will, support for this, like in the Our Father, which is one of the most important Christian prayers, also known as the Lord's Prayer. You talk about, at one point you say, hallowed be thy name. And that doesn't mean hollow, like Hollow, like empty, but to hallow a name. Like, why does the prayer say, hallowed be thy name? What does it mean to hallow thy name? I would argue that's essentially what I'm arguing right now, that to hallow the name, you're not hollowing the guy in the sky who invented all of this, right? You're hollowing the name. And hollow in that sense with an A means to basically treat as holy, to sanctify. So what does it mean to sanctify the name? To sanctify the name means to treat the name itself as this kind of magical, mystical kind of creator force. It's the name that is this kind of religious placeholder. It's not some signified that signifier is supposed to be referring to, which is the way that we're inclined to think about it. And so, yeah, that's essentially how I think of it. So if you say that you believe in God today, to say I believe in God, one can do that perfectly rationally, I think, and consistent with a perfectly legitimate, scientific, modern perspective, with this nuanced understanding of what exactly you mean by God, if you mean it as this kind of placeholder for the creator, whatever that means. And then admitting that that I don't know what that means. It's a mystery. All I know is that based on many different data pieces and observations and experiences and intuitions, a belief in God, to affirm God, understood in this more open-minded way, seems to me to be essentially true. So I think if you think that's essentially true, then you can affirm a belief in God without affirming any type of kind of pre-modern superstition. That's what I think.